Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. وقال الله تعالى في سورة البقرة: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. The ayahs that I recited just now were the initial ayat, the beginning ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts Surah Al-Baqarah with Alif Lam Mim. These are the huruf al-muqatta'at. These are the letters which we do not know the meaning of. And then right after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ, that book, لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, in which there is no doubt, هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, which is guidance for the muttaqeen, guidance for the people, those who have taqwa. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the qualities of al-muttaqeen. Who are those who are al-muttaqeen? الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. These are the ones who believe in the ghaib, which is the unseen. And then they establish the prayer, and then they are those who spend in the cause of Allah, who spend from what we have given them, Allah says. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَى هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ. These are the ones who are upon the guidance from their Lord, from Allah. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And these are the ones who are the successful. So these are the beginning ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah describing the qualities of the muttaqeen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from al-muttaqeen. Ameen. The shahid here, the point that we are trying to study today is ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. The literal translation of it is that book, that book. The topic for today is one of the categories of murakkab and naqisa. So we know that there are two types of murakkab, right? Murakkab tamma and murakkab naqisa. So one of the categories of murakkab and naqisa, it's called murakkab ishari. Murakkab ishari. So this is something that we alluded to in the previous class, and I did not remember if we covered this or not. So now is the time where we learn about murakkab ishari. Okay, so let's look into the definition of murakkab ishari. Murakkab ishari is that murakkab, right? It is one of the categories of murakkab and naqisa, which means it does not complete, it does not convey the entire meaning. It does not convey the entire meaning, because murakkab tamma, also called as a jumla, it conveys the entire meaning. But murakkab and naqisa, it does not convey the entire meaning. So it is one of those categories of murakkab and naqisa which has asmaul ishara in it. Asmaul ishara. So if we looked at the different types of asmaul ishara, right? So asmaul ishara, or demonstrative pronouns. In English we have words like this, that, these, those, right? These are demonstrative pronouns, meaning they point to something which is either near or far. So the same concept in Arabic we covered earlier, in which we looked at the table of asmaul ishara, the different types of asmaul ishara. We looked at the table: hadha, hadhihi, dhalika, tilka, haulai, ulaika, hadhani, hatani. These are the asmaul ishara that we looked at, that we covered earlier. So if there is a murakkab and naqisa which has any one of these asmaul ishara, it is called murakkab ishari. It is. So if I say this book, or if I say that door, if I say this chair, or if I say this pen, or if I say those two chairs, if I say those boys, or those girls, or these chairs, or that window, all of these have asmaul ishara. All of these have asmaul ishara in them. So these are the categories of this is the murakkab that we are studying is murakkab ishari. Murakkab ishari. It's a very easy concept to understand, inshallah. This is one of the most easiest concepts in the Arabic grammar. So we started off with Zalikal Kitab, right? Zalikal Kitab. There's one point that in the Arabic language, um, so this is something that is considered from a higher level. Like, what do I mean by that? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Zalikal Kitab, but some translations, they say this book. The literal word of Zalika, it means that. But the translations, they mention this. Now, there are different explanations to that. And I was just reading few minutes back. There are 10 different opinions on this, that why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word dhalika and not hadha. So there are different explanations. One of the explanation is that to show the importance of the book, to show the greatness of the book. So sometimes in the Arabic language, even if something is near, but the ishara of far, ba'id is used. Even if something is qareeb, the ishara of ba'id is used to show its importance or to show its greatness. This is one of the explanations, and there are different explanations which are a bit technical, so we'll not go into that. But let's take the example of this book. Let's take the example of this book. So if I write two statements in the English language, one would be this is a book. This is a book, and the other one is this book. So the first one, does it convey the entire meaning, or it does not convey the entire meaning? The first one. It does, right? It does. So this is a jumla. This is a jumla. It's murakkab tamma. It is jumla ismiya, and it conveys the entire meaning. Whereas the second sentence, when you say this book, it does not convey the entire meaning. It's just used. It's like this book, but what after that? It's not. So it's a murakkab naqisa, right? So if you recall the rules of jumla ismiya and translate this is a book in Arabic, what would that be? Hadha kitabun. Hadha kitabun, right? So don't forget the bun at the end. And the rules of jumla ismiya, mubtada and khabar, right? This is mubtada, this is khabar, right? And with regards to the four different aspects, what were the four different aspects? First of all, mubtada and khabar both are marfu'. Mubtada is ma'rifa, and khabar is nakira. And for both gender and quantity, jins and adad, mubtada and khabar are the same for both gender and quantity, right? Again, the four different aspects, we have jins, adad, wus'at, and i'rab. So with regards to i'rab, marfu'. With regards to wus'at, this is ma'rifa and this is nakira, right? With regards to jins and adad, they are the same. It means that if mubtada is wahid, khabar is wahid. If mubtada is muthanna, the khabar is muthanna. And the same for muzakkar and muannath, right? So that was those were the rules of jumla ismiya. Those were the rules of jumla ismiya. Now coming to this book, which is the topic for tonight, which is murakkab ishari. So what is the formula for that? So the formula is pretty straightforward. It's very simple. The first thing, when you say this, you write hadha, right? The word for this is hadha, right? Book. What is the word for book in Arabic? Kitabun. Kitabun, right? Kitabun. So I wrote al-kitabu. Al-kitabu, right? Al-kitabu. There are two parts in murakkab ishari, just like there are two parts in murakkab tawsifi, right? What were the two parts in murakkab tawsifi? Mausuf and sifa. Mausuf and sifa. And what were the rules of murakkab tawsifi? That sifa follows the mausuf. So mausuf is the main entity and sifa follows mausuf in all the four aspects. The rules of murakkab ishari are there are two parts: ishara, ism al ishara, and musharun ilay. I think we covered this very briefly. So this is ism al ishara, right? And this is musharun ilay. There are two parts in murakkab ishari: ism al ishara and musharun ilay. Musharun ilay is the actual entity, the main entity, right? Just like in mausuf and sifa, mausuf is the main entity and sifa follows mausuf. Sifa follows mausuf, which means if the mausuf is wahid, sifa is wahid. If the mausuf is mudhakkar, sifa is mudhakkar, right? If the mausuf is ma'rifa, sifa is ma'rifa. If the mausuf is jama, sifa is jama. If the mausuf is marfu, sifa is marfu. So in all the four aspects, the sifa, it follows mausuf. So who is the main entity? Mausuf. In murakkab ishari, the main entity is the musharun ilay, is the entity or the object that is used to point. So this musharun ilay is the main entity, and the ismal ishara is brought according to the musharun ilay. In other words, isma al ishara follows musharun ilay in terms of jins, adad, and i'rab. I did not say wusat, right? The reason for that is, if you remember, when we studied asmaul ishara and the table that we had, the asmaul ishara, we said that all asmaul ishara are ma'rifa, In fact, asmaul ishara are one of the different categories of ma'rifa asma. If you remember when we studied about ma'rifa and nakira, and there were a list of items on the ma'rifa, right? So one of them was ismul ishara. So ismul ishara is always ma'rifa. Ismul ishara is always ma'rifa, which means that musharun ilay also has to be ma'rifa, right? Which means musharun ilay also has to be ma'rifa. So the wus'at thing is out of our list because these are always ma'rifa by default, which is different than mausuf and sifa, because mausuf and sifa, they both can be ma'rifa or they can be nakira as well. So when we say four aspects, Jins, adad, wus'at and i'rab. Wus'at, the case is closed. It's always ma'rifa. Now jins, adad and i'rab. Jins, adad and i'rab. So musharun, the ismal ishara is according to musharun ilay. Is according to musharun ilay, right? Hadal kitabu. So do you see the difference between this and this? What is the difference between the one that's written at the top and the one that's written the bottom? The alif lam. The alif lam, right? The alif lam. So the alif lam separates, like it just changes the entire meaning. And one more thing is the alif over here is hamzatul wasl, right? Is hamzatul wasl. So that means that it is written but not read, right? And that is why when you read like this, it will be hadhal kitabu. So there will be like two alif standing and they are not read, and the dal will be joined to the lam, right? Lam sakin. So it will be hadhal kitabu. One point that needs to be emphasized again is that since we said that Ismul Ishara is always Ma'rifa, which means that the Musharun ilay has to be Ma'rifa every time, right? That is important to note. One important point before going into these examples, if you remember in Murakkab Tawsifi, right? In Murakkab Tawsifi, it was Mausuf and Sifa, right? When you write in Arabic, the first thing to come is Mausuf, and then the Sifa comes after Mausuf, right? Waladun tawilun, for example, Waladun tawilun, a tall boy. So the first thing that you write is Mausuf, Waladun, and then it's Sifa. In English, you write the other. You write tall first and then the boy, right? So the sequence is opposite in Murakkab Tawsifi. But in Murakkab Ishari, the sequence is the same as in the Arabic language, right? So هذا الكتاب هذا الكتاب, this book, right? هذا القلم, this pen. So هذا comes first, and in English this comes first, like that. Let's look at some examples. So if I want to say this pen, what would you say for this pen in Arabic? هذا هذا القلم هذا القلم, right? If I want to say that chair, what would be? ذلك ذلك الكرسي. You would say ذلك الكرسي, right? If I want to say that watch, what would you say? ساعة ساعة. So would that be ذلك or would that be tilka? So it would be tilkas الساعة. For that watch it would be tilkas sa'atu, right? Remember the alif lam? Don't forget the alif lam. Now over here you are reading or pronouncing lam, but here you are not. And then what was the reason for that? Yes, huruf ash-shamsiya wal qamariya. Remember that. If I want to say these two books, so what would you say? Okay, what is the word for two books first? What is the word for one book? Kitabun. For two books? Kitabani. So kitabani. Now because this is ma'rifa, so you would add alif lam, right? So al kitabani, right? So half of the stress has gone. Now these hadani, hadani, right? So hadha nil kitabani, hadha nil kitabani, right? Don't forget the alif lam, and the reason for that is if you don't add the alif lam, the meaning would change from this pen to this is a pen, right? So the alif lam is important. These two students, what would be the Arabic for students? For two, it's ani sound, right? So at-talibani, at-talibani. For these, it would be hadani talibani, hadani talibani. These two students. If I want to say these students, tullabun or at-tullabu, at-tullabu, right? And the word haula'i. So if I want to say these students, the word for these is haula'i tullabu. At-tullabu, right? Alif lam, remember? And ta is from huruf al-shamsiyah. Ta is from huruf al-shamsiyah. That's why you do not read the lam. So haula'i tullabu. Haula'i tullabu. Now if I want to say this female student, the word for female student, right? What is the word for male student? Talibun. So for female, it's talibatun, right? Talibatun, talibatun for female. Now, if we want to say this, the word for feminine is hadhihi, hadhihi. And remember to add the alif lam, right? So hadhihi talibatu, hadhihi talibatu. The tanween would also go away. هذه الطالبة. Now if you look at this, usually the words هذا and هذه, right? For example, you see this standing fatha over here, and in هذا as well we have a standing fatha, right? But we do not have a kasra in هذا, but we have a kasra in هذه. So this kasra is usually standing, which means that it is read as hadhihi, little bit of stretch. But when you use it in murakkab ishari, what happens is because you have to join this in ta, so you cannot say hadhihi taliba, right? So you'll have to say hadhihi talibatu, hadhihi talibatu. So what happens is the standing kasra converts into a regular kasra. So it will be هذه الطالبة. هذه الطالبة. If I want to say these pens. So what is the word for pen? قلم. قلم. And the plural or the جمع مكسر. جمع مكسر is أقلام. أقلام. Right? أقلام. What would I do with these? What is the word for these in Arabic? هؤلاء. So do I use هؤلاء أقلام, هؤلاء الأقلام, or هذه الأقلام? Remember the concept of aqil and ghair aqil, right? So what we will do is we will use هذه هذه الأقلام. هذه الأقلام. So we will use هذه and not هؤلاء because of the عاقل غير عاقل thing. So هذه الأقلام. هذه الأقلام. Now this Hamza of أقلام is not Hamzatul Wasl. Is the Hamza of the word itself, right? So the Hamza is in the word itself. It's not an extra or additional Hamza. So that is why when you add Alif Lam, هذه الأقلام. هذه الأقلام. So these were some of the examples. These were some of the examples. Now the next step is to use Murakkab Ishari in a Jumla. Murakkab Ishari in a Jumla. I have a Jumla. This student is hardworking. This student is hardworking. So what were the steps of Jumla Ismiya? The first thing, remember, is to break or separate Mubtada and Khabar. Mubtada and Khabar. So what is Mubtada in this sentence? This student. This is Mubtada, right? And what is the Khabar? Hardworking is the Khabar, right? So how would you start the Jumla? You would start by writing the Mubtada first. So what would be the Arabic for that? هذا هذا الطالب هذا الطالب, and the word for hardworking? مجتهد. Right? هذا الطالب مجتهد. So remember the tarkeeb concept, right? We have mubtada, we have khabar, and then we have musharun ilay and ismul ishara, right? So what is mubtada, what is khabar? This is mubtada. هذا الطالب, the entire thing is mubtada, and mujtahidun is the khabar. And inside mubtada we have ismul ishara and musharun ilay. So ismul ishara is هذا, is ismul ishara, and musharun ilay is at-talibu. At-talibu. Now this statement is, this student is hardworking. Let me ask you this. If I want to say, this is a hardworking student.
This is a hardworking student.
Mm-hmm.
So, هذا طالب.
هذا, that's right.
طالب
Mm-hmm.
مجتهد.
مجتهد. هذا طالب مجتهد. So do you see the difference? هذا talibun mujtahidun. What is the difference between these two?
the alif lam
And this, the alif lam and tanween,
tanween.
right? The alif lam and tanween, and you can see that the meaning has changed. In this case, we saw the grammatical analysis of the first one. Now in this case, what is mubtada, what is khabar? This is mubtada, hadha is mubtada, and talibun mujtahidun is the khabar, right? Talibun mujtahidun is the khabar, and inside the khabar we have mawsuf and sifa. We have mawsuf and sifa. Who is the mawsuf? Talibun. And what is the sifa? Mujtahidun. So you can see that the alif lam has changed the entire meaning, right? This student is hardworking, has a talibu mujtahidun, versus this is a hardworking student, has a talibun mujtahidun. So we'll go over these examples very quickly, inshallah. Starting from the first one, that boy is righteous. That boy is righteous. Remember, the first step is to separate mubtada from khabar, right? So, what is mubtada in that boy?
That one.
What is the Arabic word for that?
Zalika.
Dhalika. So, dhalika al-waladu, dhalikal waladu salihun. Dhalikal waladu salihun. Right? Mubtada is dhalikal waladu is mubtada. Salihun khabar. Inside the mubtada we have musharun ilay and ismal ishara. Dhalika is ismal ishara and al waladu is musharun ilay. This chair is broken. This chair. هذا هذا الكرسي مكسور. هذا الكرسي مكسور. This pen is black. هذا ال هذا القلم. هذا القلم or هذا القلم. هذا القلم black. أسود. هذا القلم أسود. Because it's غير منصرف. أسود colors. Colors are غير منصرف. هذا القلم أسود. That door is open or closed. So let's do open. That door. ذلك. ذلك الباب مفتوح. مفتوح. ذلك الباب مفتوح. What is the mubtada? What is the khabar? ذلك الباب is mubtada. Khabar is maftuhun, right? And inside the mubtada we have musharun ilay, which is al-babu, and the ismal ishara is ذلك. The ismal ishara is ذلك. And if I want to say that door is closed, ذلك الباب مغلق. مغلق. ذلك الباب مغلق. If I want to say that window, What is the word for window, remember? Nafizatun. Nafizatun. Okay. So if I want to say that window, will it be ذَلِكَ النَّافِذَةُ tilka, right? Because of oneness. Ta marbuta. So tilka, tilka, an nafizatu, not tun, because of the alif lam. Tilkan nafizatu maftuhatun. Maftuhatun. Tilkan nafizatu maftuhatun. And the same way, if I want to say closed, tilkan nafizatu mugh mughlatun or tu tun, because the alif lam is there on the musharun ilay, not on the khabar. Khabar is nakira, remember? Mughlaqatun is the khabar, right? So tilkan nafidhatu mughlaqatun. Mughlaqatun. If I want to say that student is hard working, that student. ذلك الطالب مجتهد. ذلك الطالب مجتهد. If I want to say that man is tall, ذلك الرجل طويل. طويل. ذلك الرجل or ذلك الرجل. Yeah, because it is from Ash-Shamsiyya, right? The sun letters. Any questions? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.